without having any emotional involvement or attachment towards God himself at all. But when you pray in the Spirit, you will increasingly share the Spirit's passion. Now, the best way I can describe this in these last moments is simply to give you a sample of what it can look like. My own home church in Edinburgh, Scotland, was born out of a revival nearly 100 years ago now. When I say revival, I don't mean an organized series of meetings. What I mean is something that God did, a visitation from God that elevated the spiritual life of a whole community. I'd like to read part of the record written at the time of those events. My grandmother would have been 7 years old at this time. I wish with all my heart that I could have been there. The people were on the tiptoe of expectancy for a revival. A conference on January 22nd, 1906, addressed by several workers who had visited Wales, lasted from 3:30 until midnight. From that day, it was felt that the fire of God had fallen, and as far as Charlotte Chapel, the name of the church, was concerned, God had answered prayer and reviving had come. The church had prayed one whole year without so much as a solitary break. Night after night, week after week, month after month, prayer meetings went on, increasing in numbers and intensity. It is impossible to convey any adequate idea of the prayer passion that characterized those meetings. It is necessary to be in it to know it. From the beginning to the close, the prayers ascended in one broken continuity. At time, prayer rose and fell like waves on the sea. There was no confusion. Towards the end of 1906, there were again indications that God was about to move in our midst. Attendances at the 7 a.m. prayer meeting on Sunday mornings increased, and the meetings were marked by a deepening spirit of prayer. This was followed up by the same spirit in weeknight prayer meetings. It was at a late-night prayer meeting held on the evening at 9:30 that the fire of God fell. There was nothing humanly speaking to account for what happened. Just quite suddenly, upon one and another, an overwhelming sense of the reality and the awfulness of God's presence and of eternal things, of life, death, and eternity, fell upon us, and suddenly all things were laid bare. Then prayer broke out again, waves and waves of prayer, and the midnight hour was reached. The hours passed like minutes. One who was present says, "I cannot tell you what Christ meant to me last night. My heart was overflowing. If ever God was near to me, it was here last night." The pastor writes this assessment: "I have yet to witness a movement that has produced more permanent results in the lives of men and women and children. There were some irregularities, no doubt, some commotion, yes, but such a movement with all its irregularities is to be preferred far above the dull, dreary, monotonous decorum of many churches." The pastor, Jack Kemp, writes these words, and as I read them to you, I want you to ask how many of them we need. If its genuineness can be attested by results, then we have no doubt regarding the genuineness of this movement of God. It has given us, and I quote, "a full church night and morning. It has given us a most loyal and devoted band of workers whose aim is the glory of God and the salvation of sinners. It has taught us to pray in a fashion that few of us knew before. It has given to both young and old a new love for the Bible, and time would fail to tell, notice this, of purified lives, changed homes, and the brightened outlook of hundreds. Scores of people came to faith in Jesus Christ over these 2 years in which this movement of prayer in the Holy Spirit touched one church. You can't generate this, but you can hunger for it. You can pray for it. I'm asking, as I think about these things, what do we know of them in our lives? Where are we seeing that transformation of a home, What difference would it make to your family, to this church, to your business, if you learned to pray in the Holy Spirit? My question as I've poured over and into this in these last days is simply this: is there a hunger for such things among us? Oh, breath of life, come sweeping through us. Revive your church with life and power. Oh, breath of life, come cleanse, renew us, and fit your church to meet this hour. And we've got some work to do.